Let Jesus speak to your heart to lead you to peace and presence. There is a voice speaking to you right now, not out loud, not through speakers, but inside your own thoughts. It comments on your day before anyone else does. It evaluates your choices while you are still making them. It predicts outcomes before events even unfold. It replays what went wrong and magnifies what could go wrong next. You may not see it, but you feel it. And little by little, that voice is shaping you. Some days it sounds like fear, urgent, intense. It tells you that if you slow down, everything will collapse. That if you rest, you will fall behind. That if you trust, you will be disappointed. It makes your heart race and your shoulders tighten. It convinces you that control is survival. Other days it sounds like self-criticism. Softer, but sharper. It compares you to a version of yourself that does not exist. It points out every flaw, every delay, every weakness. It tells you that you should be further by now, that your faith should be stronger, that your prayers should feel deeper. It does not scream, it calculates. Sometimes it sounds like comparison. You scroll, you observe, you measure, and without realizing it, you begin to believe that everyone else is ahead, more stable, more blessed, more certain. The voice whispers that you are late to your own life. And then there is the voice of urgency. Do more, fix more, prove more. Hurry. It does not allow space for reflection. It does not allow room for stillness. It keeps you in motion because motion feels productive, even when your soul is exhausted. You have learned to live with this noise. You wake up to it. You drive with it. You carry it into conversations. You fall asleep with it, still negotiating tomorrow. It feels normal, but normal does not mean true, and familiar does not mean faithful. Pause for a moment and consider this. The voice you consistently listen to becomes the voice that shapes your identity. If you listen to fear, you will live defensive. If you listen to shame, you will live small. If you listen to urgency, you will live restless. The voice inside you is not neutral, it is formative. So let me ask you something that might gently disrupt everything you assumed. What if the loudest voice in your life is not the truest one? What if the voice narrating your doubts is not the voice of Jesus? What if you have been mistaking intensity for authority? Jesus does not compete with chaos. He does not interrupt your anxiety with louder anxiety. He does not shame your weakness into submission. His voice carries something entirely different. It carries authority without pressure, clarity without aggression, correction without humiliation. When he speaks, something inside you settles instead of panics. But here's the challenge. We have trained our hearts to respond to volume. The louder the thought, the more urgent it feels. The more urgent it feels, the more real it seems. Yet peace rarely shouts. Truth does not need to rush. Love does not need to force attention. Maybe the reason you feel distant from God is not because he stopped speaking. Maybe it is because other voices became louder. Maybe you have been listening to the wrong narrator. Imagine for a moment what would change if the voice guiding your decisions was not fear, but Christ. If the voice shaping your self-image was not comparison, but compassion. If the voice influencing your future was not anxiety, but assurance. This is not about becoming more religious. It is about becoming more attentive. Because the direction of your life follows the voice you trust. Right now, in this very moment, you have a choice. Continue letting the internal noise dictate your peace, or begin to discern a different voice, a steady one, a faithful one, a voice that knows you completely and still speaks life. Tonight, you will not try harder. You will not force feelings. You will not manufacture calm. Tonight, you will listen differently. And what you hear may change everything. The war of voices inside the heart. Inside your heart, there is a quiet battlefield. It does not look dramatic from the outside. You may smile. You may function. You may complete your responsibilities. But internally, there is a constant negotiation taking place. Different voices presenting different versions of reality. and whichever one you believe begins to shape how you live. Anxiety often sounds the most urgent. It presents itself as protection. It tells you that if you worry enough, you will be prepared. If you anticipate every possible failure, you will avoid disappointment. It makes your thoughts move fast because speed feels like control, and control feels like safety. That is why anxiety feels convincing. It sounds responsible. It disguises itself as wisdom. Shame speaks differently. It is not always loud, but it is persistent. It reminds you of your past. It magnifies your mistakes. It tells you that growth is slow because you are flawed. It convinces you that God must be disappointed, even when there is no evidence of rejection. Shame does not need facts. It only needs your agreement. Then there is the voice of self-reliance. It tells you that you must solve everything alone. That dependence is weakness. That faith is fine as long as you are still in control. It allows you to believe in Jesus while still carrying burdens he never asked you to hold. And in the middle of all of this, there is the voice of Christ. Not aggressive, not manipulative, not desperate for attention. His voice does not compete for volume. It carries authority. There is a difference. We often assume that the strongest voice is the truest one. But volume is not authority. Urgency is not truth. Intensity is not wisdom. Peace does not shout because it does not need to defend itself. Jesus speaks in a way that invites rather than forces. He does not overpower your will. He draws it. He does not overwhelm your mind. He steadies it. His words do not produce panic. They produce clarity. The war inside your heart is not about whether God is speaking. It is about which voice you are trained to recognize. If you have practiced listening to fear for years, fear will sound familiar. If you have rehearsed self-criticism daily, compassion will sound foreign. This is why it sometimes feels difficult to hear him. Not because he is distant, but because other voices have been amplified through repetition. What you repeatedly entertain becomes the soundtrack of your inner life. But here is the shift. Peace is not passive. Peace has authority. When Jesus speaks, something aligns. Your breathing slows, your thoughts soften, your body relaxes. There is a subtle but undeniable recognition. You sense that you are safe. The war of voices continues until you become intentional about discernment, until you pause and ask, which voice is shaping my identity right now? Which voice is influencing my decisions? Which voice is defining my worth? You cannot silence every thought, but you can choose which one you trust. And once you begin to recognize the difference between urgency and authority, between shame and conviction, between fear and truth, everything changes. Because the battle is no longer confusing. It becomes clear. The question is no longer whether Jesus is speaking. The question becomes, will you slow down enough to recognize his voice when he does? When Jesus speaks, he speaks to identity first. Most of the voices in your head talk about performance. Do better. Try harder. Fix this. Improve that. They focus on what you did, what you failed to do, or what you should be doing next. They measure your value by your productivity. They calculate your worth by your consistency. And without noticing, you begin to believe that your relationship with God works the same way. But when Jesus speaks, he does not begin with performance. He begins with identity. Before he corrects behavior, he restores belonging. Before he addresses your actions, he anchors who you are. This is where everything shifts. Because when identity is secure, obedience becomes a response, not a burden. Think about it. Fear tells you that you are alone. Jesus says you are mine. Shame tells you that you are defined by your worst moment. Jesus says you are not your past. Anxiety tells you that you must hold everything together. Jesus says you are held. His voice does not rush to demand change. It settles into your heart and redefines your foundation. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. You are not tolerated. You are loved. Not because you earned it, not because you performed well, but because you belong to him. This is why hearing his voice brings peace. Identity spoken by Christ has weight. It breaks agreements you made with lies. It gently dismantles narratives you accepted about yourself. You may have believed that you are behind in life, that you are spiritually weak, that you disappoint God more than you please Him. But when Jesus speaks, He does not rehearse your failures. He reminds you of your sonship, your daughterhood. He reminds you that your worth was settled at the cross, not negotiated in your daily performance. And here is the deeper truth. Transformation does not begin when you try harder. It begins when you believe differently about who you are in Him. When you hear Him say you are chosen, your insecurity begins to lose its grip. When you hear Him say you are forgiven, shame begins to weaken. When you hear Him say you are secure, fear begins to retreat. This is not motivational language. This is spiritual realignment. Identity is the root. Behavior is the fruit. If the root is nourished by truth, the fruit will follow naturally. Many people struggle to feel peace because they are trying to fix their habits without allowing Jesus to heal their identity. They are fighting symptoms while ignoring the source. But when His voice reaches the core of who you are, everything else starts to shift quietly. You do not need louder affirmations. You need truer ones. And His voice is the truest voice you will ever hear. If you can allow Him to speak to your identity first, you will stop striving to become someone worthy of peace. You will realize you already belong to the One who is peace. The difference between hearing about Jesus and letting Him speak. It is possible to know many things about Jesus and still feel restless inside. You can listen to sermons. You can read devotionals. You can repeat verses. You can fill your mind with information and still carry anxiety in your chest. Knowledge alone does not quiet the heart. Information informs the mind. Presence transforms the soul. There is a subtle difference between hearing about Jesus and letting Him speak to you. Hearing about Him keeps Him at a distance. It turns Him into a subject to study, a concept to understand, a message to consume. Letting Him speak brings Him near. It requires openness. It requires vulnerability. It requires surrender. Many people are spiritually informed but emotionally guarded. They listen with their intellect but protect their heart. They agree with truth in theory but resist it in practice. They know that God loves them, yet they do not let that love confront their fear. They know that Christ forgives, yet they continue to carry shame as if forgiveness were incomplete. Sometimes spiritual content becomes another form of noise. It sounds good, it feels inspiring, but it never moves from the ears to the core. It stays external. It never settles deep enough to reshape the inner dialogue. Letting Jesus speak is different. It means slowing down long enough for His words to reach places you normally hide. It means allowing His truth to challenge the agreements you made with insecurity. It means being honest about your resistance. Information asks for attention. Intimacy asks for trust. You can listen to 10 messages in one day and still avoid the one sentence Jesus wants to whisper directly to your heart. Because that sentence may require you to release control. It may require you to admit you are tired. It may require you to stop pretending you are stronger than you feel. There is no peace in spiritual consumption without spiritual surrender. You do not need more content. You need more openness. When you let Him speak, something shifts from external inspiration to internal transformation. His voice moves from theory to encounter, from general truth to personal application. And here is the uncomfortable but freeing question. Are you listening to learn more, or are you listening to be changed? Because letting Jesus speak means you are willing to be interrupted, willing to be corrected gently, willing to be loved in places you have kept guarded. Peace does not come from knowing more about Him. Peace comes from allowing Him closer than your fear. The sacred space of silence. Most people are not avoiding God. They are avoiding silence. Because silence removes distraction. It exposes what is underneath the surface. And what is underneath is not always comfortable. Unanswered questions. Fatigue. Disappointment. Longing. So instead of sitting still, we fill every empty moment with sound. Music. Notifications. Conversations. Even spiritual content. Anything to keep the heart from speaking too honestly. But silence is not emptiness. Silence is space. And space is where presence becomes noticeable. When everything is loud, even truth can feel distant. Not because it is absent, but because it is crowded out. Jesus does not force his way into noise. He waits in the stillness, not impatiently, not offended, simply present. Silence is where your heart recalibrates, where your breathing slows, where urgency loses its grip. When you stop rehearsing tomorrow's problems and start observing what is happening inside you, something begins to soften. At first, silence may feel unfamiliar. Your mind may resist it. Thoughts may rush in faster. Old worries may resurface. That does not mean you are failing. It means you are finally hearing what was always there. And once it surfaces, it can be surrendered. Silence allows you to notice the difference between chaotic thoughts and steady truth. Anxiety rushes, peace remains, fear pressures, love assures. In stillness, you begin to discern which voice carries weight and which one only carries noise. You do not need to say many words, you do not need to perform a perfect prayer. Sometimes the most honest prayer is simple. Jesus, I am here. Speak. There is something sacred about choosing to be still in a world addicted to motion. It is an act of trust. It says I do not have to solve everything right now. It says I believe that presence matters more than productivity. In silence, you may begin to sense something subtle, not dramatic, not overwhelming, but steady. A reassurance that you are not alone in your thoughts, a quiet strength that was there all along. This is where listening changes, not in noise, not in striving, but in the sacred space where you stop trying to manage your life for a moment and simply allow yourself to be with him. Peace is rarely found in acceleration. It is discovered in surrender. And surrender often begins with stillness, letting Jesus speak into your specific anxiety. It is one thing to talk about peace in general. It is another thing to let Jesus speak into the exact place where you feel fragile. General encouragement feels safe. Specific surrender feels vulnerable, because when his voice moves from ideas to your actual fears, everything becomes personal. Maybe your anxiety is about the future, the uncertainty, the unanswered questions. You want guarantees before you rest. You want clarity before you trust. And the waiting feels heavy. When Jesus speaks into that space, he does not always give a detailed plan. He gives something deeper, assurance of his presence. A reminder that tomorrow is not facing you alone. Maybe your anxiety is emotional exhaustion. You are tired of being strong, tired of holding things together, tired of pretending that you are fine. And somewhere inside, you fear that if you slow down, everything you suppressed will surface. When Jesus speaks there, he does not demand resilience. He acknowledges your weariness. He says you do not have to carry what is crushing you. He invites you to rest without guilt. Maybe your hidden struggle is disappointment, prayers that felt unanswered, doors that did not open, expectations that quietly collapsed. You have not spoken about it much, but it sits in your chest. When he speaks into disappointment, he does not minimize it. He does not shame you for feeling it. He reminds you that delay is not abandonment, that silence is not absence, that his timing is not punishment. And maybe your struggle is spiritual dryness. You believe in him, but you do not feel him. You pray, but it feels mechanical. You worship, but it feels distant. When Jesus speaks into dryness, he does not accuse you of lacking faith. He gently draws you closer. He reassures you that feelings fluctuate, but his presence remains. Let this become personal for a moment. Imagine him speaking directly into your specific anxiety, not generically, not theoretically, directly. I see how tired you are. I know what you are carrying. You are not weak for feeling this. You are not forgotten in this season. You are not alone in this room. Notice what happens inside you when those words settle. Anxiety tightens the chest. His voice loosens it. Fear accelerates the heart. His presence steadies it. This is where peace becomes real. Not because your circumstances instantly change, but because your perception shifts. You realize that your situation is not defining you. His voice is. Letting him speak into your specific anxiety requires honesty. It requires you to name what you are afraid of, to admit what you are tired of, to acknowledge what you have been pretending is not affecting you. But once you do, his words do not condemn. They restore, they realign. They remind you that the burden feels heavy because you were never meant to carry it alone. And when that truth lands deeply, something inside you begins to unclench. Peace is not a feeling, it is a presence. Most people chase peace as if it were an emotion, a calm mood, a quiet day, a stable season. And when those conditions disappear, they assume peace has disappeared too. But peace was never meant to depend on circumstances. Peace is not the absence of problems, it is the presence of someone greater than them. If peace were only a feeling, it would come and go with your hormones, your schedule, your news feed. It would rise when things go well and collapse when they do not. That kind of peace is fragile. It depends on control. And control is temporary. But the peace Jesus offers is not fragile. It is relational. He does not hand you peace as a separate gift and then step away. He gives you himself. And where he is acknowledged, peace becomes possible even in tension. Think about this carefully. Anxiety tries to sit on the throne of your heart. It tells you that it must manage every outcome, that it must anticipate every threat, that it must remain alert at all times. It claims authority, but it does not have it. When Jesus speaks, he does not argue with anxiety, he replaces it. His presence reorders the inner world, not through force, but through truth. The moment you become aware that he is near, something inside you recalibrates. The threat may still exist, the uncertainty may still remain, but you are no longer facing it alone. Peace is not the removal of storms. It is the realization that the one who commands the storm is with you in the boat. This changes how you interpret your circumstances. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin to ask, "Where is he in this with me?" And when you sense that he is not moved, your panic begins to lose authority. Peace does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying what was never yours to control. It means you entrust outcomes to the one who sees beyond your limited perspective. The world defines peace as quiet surroundings. Jesus defines peace as confident trust. When his presence becomes real to you, anxiety no longer dictates your identity. It may still knock, it may still whisper, but it no longer sits in the center. His voice does. And when his voice sits at the center, your heart steadies. Not because everything makes sense, but because you are anchored. Peace is not something you manufacture. It is someone you receive. Do not move away from this moment. Do not rush to the next task. This is not information to process. This is an invitation to experience. Take a slow breath. Let your shoulders drop. You do not need to perform anything right now. You do not need to prove faith. You only need to be present. Whisper within your heart, "Jesus, speak. I am listening." Let the noise settle for a moment. Thoughts may still move, but you do not have to follow each one. Simply become aware that he is near. Not distant, not observing from far away. Near. Now allow these words to reach you personally. You are not carrying this season alone. I see what others do not see. I know the pressure you have not spoken about. You do not have to hold yourself together for me. I am not disappointed in your weakness. Let those words sink deeper than surface level. Do not analyze them. Receive them. I have not left you in your confusion. I am working in ways you cannot measure yet. Your future is not fragile in my hands. Rest does not mean failure. It means trust. Notice what shifts inside when you stop striving and start receiving. You do not need to manufacture emotion to know he is present. Presence is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is simply the quiet awareness that you are safe in him. If your heart feels tense, let him speak into that tension. You are safe here. You are loved here. You are known here. Stay in this space for a few seconds longer. Let his voice become more familiar than the voice of fear. Let his truth feel more solid than the urgency that usually drives you. You asked him to speak. Trust that he is. You do not have to leave this moment with everything solved. You do not have to feel overwhelming emotion to know something meaningful happened. Sometimes the deepest shifts are quiet, subtle, steady. What matters is not that every question disappeared. What matters is that you recognized a different voice, a voice that does not accuse, a voice that does not rush, a voice that does not demand performance before offering love. You do not have to force peace. Peace is not produced by effort. It grows in awareness. The more you acknowledge his presence, the more stable your heart becomes. Not because life becomes easier, but because you are no longer facing it alone. You do not have to earn his closeness. You do not have to reach a spiritual level before he speaks. He has been near all along. The shift was never about his distance. It was about your attention. From this point forward, you will still hear other voices. Fear will try to interrupt. Urgency will try to accelerate you. Shame may attempt to resurface. But now you know something you did not fully embrace before. Volume is not authority. Noise is not truth. And the loudest voice is not always the right one. When anxiety begins to speak, pause. When pressure increases, slow down. When self-criticism grows louder, remember what he already said about you. Return to that steady voice, the one that restores identity, the one that anchors you in belonging, the one that carries peace without striving. Let this become a daily rhythm, not a dramatic event, not a rare experience, but a consistent awareness, listening differently, trusting deeper, resting sooner. If this moment brought calm to your heart, stay connected. There is more to discover, more truth to receive, more presence to experience. You are not alone in this journey, and you do not have to figure it out by yourself. Stay open, stay attentive. Let him keep speaking.